The movie starts with a man carrying a weapon searching for someone at Grand Central Terminal. He passes by a man reading a newspaper, a couple hugging, and some school children. Seeing the weapon in his hand, a woman cries out and people start running. The security officials move towards him, and the man goes near a pregnant woman and touches her belly, while another man with a weapon reaches them at the same time. They both point their weapons at each other, and the clock strikes 2:22 p.m., and we hear gunshots and people crying. Apparently, this is a dream. Dylan gets up from his bed after having that disturbing dream. He turns off his alarm and starts getting ready for work. He listens to the news while doing exercise. The news is about a supernova explosion of a star that is going to be observed in the next 2 weeks. The star, Hamlin, died 30 years ago, but its light will be reaching the Earth 30 years later. Dylan dresses up and leaves for work on his bicycle. He gets to Grand Central Station and boards a train to the airport, where he works as an air traffic controller. He is very good at seeing patterns in the sky and uses that skill for his work. After work, he goes to a club with his co-workers to drink. For his upcoming birthday, one of his colleagues gives him a ticket to an aerial dance. The next day, at 2:22 p.m. when he's at work, he starts to see patterns of stars in the sky. He experiences hallucinations about his disturbing dream, and does not talk to the pilots on time. He checks the clock, and notices that it has stopped. Dylan returns to his senses when his co-workers call him. As he couldn't direct the planes on time, they were about to collide. He then quickly directs the pilots and avoids a horrible disaster. The passengers in the plane take a sigh of relief, and Dylan sees that the clock is now working again. He is suspended from his job for 4 weeks because of his negligence, which could have caused a horrible plane crash. The following day, he heads to the aerial dance by going through Grand Central Station. At the station, a window breaks at exactly 2:22 p.m. He ignores this and heads for the aerial dance at Royce Theater. Here, he meets a beautiful girl named Sarah, who was a passenger in one of the planes that almost collided due to Dylan's negligence. They both go to a restaurant, and Dylan tells Sarah about his father, who was a pilot. He further tells her he wanted to become a pilot, but he could not achieve that because he was too scared to fly. Sarah tells him she works at the Howard Pace Art Gallery. Dylan then tells her about the day he almost caused a terrible plane crash, and Sarah tells him she was on one of the flights. Dylan feels embarrassed for his negligence, but Sarah tells him he saved her. While leaving the restaurant, they feel as if they have already known each other for a long time. The next day, when Sarah goes to the art gallery, she sees her ex-boyfriend Jonas, who was an artist in the gallery. Jonas notices Sarah is very happy and glowing. In the next scene, we see Dylan receiving a phone call from Grand Central about his wallet that was found on the train. While he's talking on the phone, he sees an accident happen outside his building. He then goes to Grand Central to get his wallet. At Grand Central, he sees a man with a newspaper, a couple embracing each other, some school children, and a pregnant woman standing there. It was the same scenario as the disturbing dream he had. At exactly 2:22 p.m., the lights flicker and sparks come out of them. Later, he goes to the art gallery where Sarah works and asks her to go for dinner. They go to Central Park, and Sarah tells him about her injury that ended her dancing career. Dylan cheers her up by using a paper cup and an ice cream cup holder to make a speaker, and they both dance together. They go to Dylan's apartment and engage in an intimate moment. The next morning, Dylan notices her necklace, and Sarah tells him Jonas gave it to her. He asks about her birthday, and she answers April 18th, 1986. They are surprised to find that they share the same birth date and year and are going to be 30 years old the next week. At exactly 9:15 a.m., Dylan hears a car crash on the road below his flat. He tells Sarah that this is the 3rd day in a row that the same thing has happened. Then Sarah goes to her art gallery where Jonas comes to know about her relationship with Dylan. Jonas pretends to be happy about this, but he's not. The next scene shows Dylan in a cab where he receives Sarah's message, who can't wait to see him. On the way to the Grand Central, he experiences the same happenings that he now sees daily, and he asks the driver to take a different route, but he refuses. He then tells the driver to stop the cab and let him out. The driver gets angry and stops the car, and suddenly, another car crashes into them, causing their car to flip upside down. People come to rescue the driver and Dylan, who has an injury to his head. Dylan stands up and sees Grand Central Terminal. He then experiences the hallucination of a man with a weapon. Dylan tells Sarah about his hallucination for the last 3 days consecutively. Sarah consoles him and tells him it's okay. He goes home at 9:10 a.m. and a drop of water falls on his hand when he's turning off the alarm. He also sees a dead bug on the floor of his apartment. Later, he feels there are certain patterns behind all these happenings, and he starts to write down everything that happened that day. He begins with the drop of water, then moves on to a bug dying, and finally a plane flying over. Dylan checks out the pattern again the next day by going to the top of his apartment building. Like yesterday, he waits for a drop of water, but the sky is clear today. However, he is surprised to find that at exactly 9:10 a.m., a drop of water falls on his notebook. He closes the notebook in surprise, and when he opens it again, there was a dead bug on a page of the notebook. After that, an airplane flies over him. Dylan is surprised that the events are happening again. Dylan goes to the gallery to look for Sarah and sees that Jonas's art is being shown. Jonas made a light hologram exhibition about Grand Central Station, and Dylan can see that it looks just like the things that he has been seeing in the last few days. Millhurst Express boarding announcement, a businessman reading his newspaper, a couple hugging each other, a line of school children, and a pregnant woman standing under the clocks. Since Dylan is the only one who knows about these events, he thinks that Jonas is following him around, and a fight breaks out between him and Jonas, and he asks Jonas if he's been following him around. The fight is interrupted when the owner of Kiefer Gallery cheers and says it was a great idea to play out the murder that happened 30 years ago at Grand Central Station. Sarah gets angry at Dylan and apologizes to Jonas about Dylan's behavior. After some time, Dylan texts Sarah and asks her to forgive him. He later finds a passport with a lot of letters hidden in his house. He learns that these letters were written by a woman named Evelyn to a man named Jake Redmond. He also learns from the letter that Jake Redmond used to live in his apartment 30 years ago. His search also leads him to an online story about a murder that took place 30 years ago in Grand Central, where Jake ended his lover Evelyn's life, who was pregnant at the time, and a police officer in the middle of Grand Central. The murder took place at exactly 2:22 p.m. It was reported that Jake ended Evelyn's life because he was upset that Evelyn was in a relationship with the police officer, Noah Marks. Besides that, Dylan learns that he, Jake, Evelyn, and Sarah have the same birthday, April 18th. He also learns that he and Sarah were born on the same day that Jake and Evelyn died. Then, he checks the letters for Evelyn's address, and then goes to the address and finds Evelyn's sister, who tells him that Evelyn loved Jake a lot. She tells him that Noah Marks was also in love with Evelyn. She hands Dylan a bunch of letters that Jake wrote to Evelyn, explaining that she couldn't bring herself to read them. She also shows him her necklace, saying it's all she needs to remember Evelyn. The necklace looks just like the one Dylan saw Sarah wear. When Dylan gets home, he makes a connection between their position and what happened in the sky 30 years ago. He finds that the 3 stars in the constellation are actually Jake, Evelyn, and Noah, while Dylan, Sarah, and Jonas replace them. Dylan puts everything together and realizes that he and Sarah are really Jake and Evelyn from a past life. He texts Sarah telling her what he's been up to and asks her to call him. In the next scene, Sarah is looking at Jonas's holograms in the gallery. She tells Jonas about what Dylan found, but Jonas says it's just Dylan's crazy thoughts. Dylan goes to Grand Central Station to get a ticket for Millhurst Express, but finds out that it has been changed to Poughkeepsie Express 30 years ago. At 2:22 p.m., the chandelier in Grand Central Station falls to the floor. In the next scene, Sarah goes to Dylan's apartment and finds him upset and tries to make him feel better. He explains to her the patterns he's been seeing and how he thinks they're Jake and Evelyn, but Sarah doesn't believe him. While she tries to comfort Dylan, he insists they should break up because he's afraid he might harm Sarah, which he doesn't want to do. When Sarah leaves, Dylan goes to the roof and plans to jump off the building, but he changes his mind. Sarah then goes to Jonas's apartment. Jonas offers to take her on a trip to get away from Dylan as he seems dangerous. The next day is April 18th, which is their birthday. Dylan keeps looking at the pattern and he believes he is seeing the day he dies. At the same time, Jonas and Sarah head to the airport for their flight to Millhurst. Dylan goes to Jonas's apartment and finds he is not at home. He breaks in and is shocked to see a wall covered with pictures and holograms of Sarah. He also finds an empty gun case, confirming his concern that Sarah is in danger. Dylan tries to call Sarah, but she doesn't pick up. Meanwhile, Jonas and Sarah's flight gets cancelled, so they head to Grand Central to board a train instead. Dylan starts running to Grand Central to save Sarah, and at Grand Central, Jonas gets tickets to Millhurst while Sarah is waiting under the clock. On his way, Dylan is stopped by some policemen because he is acting strangely. He tries to run away and the policemen fire at him, hitting a glass. At the same time, the lights at the Grand Central station suddenly broke, startling Sarah. Jonas returns and hands her a ticket to Poughkeepsie, but she's confused because she thought they were going to Millhurst. Sarah tells him she can't go with him since she loves Dylan, and Jonas gets angry and calls her Evelyn, which surprises Sarah. Dylan then arrives at Grand Central and Jonas approaches him with a weapon. Jonas first aims the weapon at Dylan, then points it at Sarah, saying she'll never be Dylan's. Jonas fires at Sarah, but Dylan steps in to shield her just in time. The policemen quickly arrive and open fire on Jonas at 2:22 p.m. Dylan closes his eyes for a moment as he falls into Sarah's arms, as he hallucinates about Jake and Evelyn being affectionate with each other. Sarah then checks the time and sees that it is 2:23 p.m. They have made it through, and now fate has changed. Finally, we learn that Noah Marks killed Evelyn and Jake in the past life, but the police lied about it to protect themselves. In the end, Dylan and Sarah are shown to be living a happy life. Dylan has finally gotten over his fear of flying and is now a pilot, and Sarah is seen smiling lovingly at their baby in the cradle. That'll be all for today's recap. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. And thanks for watching.